All right, it's time to talk Chicago Bears football. And this is going to be a heck of an offseason for the Chicago Bears and their fans. Of course, we all knew it after the deal last offseason, but it's still, with the Carolina Panthers being as bad as they were, a Bears dream. They now have the first pick of the draft. And it's going to be quite interesting to find out what the big decision is. Of course, what the answer is to the big decision that the Bears have. And Mark Carman, who was with us for the first time this past off season to help us preview the 2023 season for the Bears, is with us back once again. Mark, thanks for doing this.
It's my pleasure, Greg. Good to be here.
All right, Mark. So let's get right to it. Let's get to the big meat question, the one that everybody's asking. Because from an outsider's point of view, and this is what I think is interesting, because obviously I don't watch every play of field. I'm not there all the time. You guys are. So from the outside perspective, and I know Caleb Williams, that's my job, scouting him, taking a look at him, trying to figure that out and all that. And everybody believes he's going to be a really good quarterback, but there are warts. And so when I look at what I see as Justin Fields, and I say to myself, you know what? If he's got a really good coordinator, if he's got better players around him, he looks like he's talented enough that he could really get, maybe there's another gear there. And why not just surround him with better players and use that first pick, maybe slide down a little bit, get Marvin Harrison to team up with DJ Moore, and maybe you got something going as opposed to just taking a little bit of a risk with Caleb Williams. That's my perspective. But again, I know there's a lot of Bears fans out there, like I said, that know Fields more than I do, and I'm sure they have mixed feelings. But I'm assuming they want Caleb Williams more. But you tell me.
Well, there's a lot of different corners of Bears fandom right now. There's the absolutely love Justin Fields, and when I have conversations with those people, I'll say to them, listen, let's just say I'm telling you, you are drafting the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. That's who you're picking, a Hall of Famer. And depending on who you talk to, even in that corner, you say that they still want to stick with Justin because they believe in Justin and, they want the value for the pick and all the stuff that you're naming as far as building the team around him.
Okay.
And then there's the others are get rid of Fields, period, end of story. He can't play at all. Or can play very little. He can't throw the ball. He's going to get hurt running. And he's been here 3 years, and he's never thrown for 3,000 yards, let alone 4,000, let alone 5,000. So it's over, period, end of story. And then there's, I would say, a large sum of us who sort of sit in the middle, where you, at least for me, if you, and I put my trust in the Bears general manager, Ryan Poles. If you sit down and you meet with Caleb and your opinion is that this guy is the next thing and you're get comfortable on the character stuff, which I think is overblown, but let's just put that in there anyway. You get comfortable on all of that. Then I think you have to take him. You can't not take a big swing here when you're sitting with the number one overall pick. And it was interesting. Last offseason, they Ryan Poles had to be blown away, right? So Poles is saying that he had to be blown away last year. Well, CJ Stroud blew the NFL away this year. That's your offensive rookie of the year. That is a MVP candidate. Not going to win it, but he's had an unbelievable season. And by the way, as we're recording this, he's still playing. So,
yeah.
It falls under the did you miss on CJ? And I think that's a very fair question. Now, listen, the Bears needed more things then. So it made sense to trade him, trade the pick at least. And it was only, 2 years of Justin, and you had done it on a terrible Matt Nagy first year and then a torn down roster the second year. So completely not fair to Justin. So he has to be, I would think, less blown away now. But it's also interesting when Poles talks about the trade, because he was asked about whether or not he regretted the deal. And he said no, because of all they got. Well, yeah, correct. But they lucked into the number one pick. There's no way he knew that he was getting the number 1 pick when he made the deal. He knew, I think, conservatively that he was getting a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
But some people thought that Carolina in the South was going to win that division.
They
It was
did.
so wide open.
They did.
Yeah. So the bottom line is that the way it worked out, he's sitting here now with the 1 pick, which is, phenomenal. Caleb, generational talent, people are calling him. Greg, you probably know this better than I do, whether you think he's going to be that. But they're in a great position. But it's interesting. Like last year, he said he had to be blown away, and this year he's basically saying the same thing, and that it needs to, it's not just the player, it's the person. They love Justin, the person, and there's a lot of people in that building who believe that if he was protected a little bit better and had more weapons, that you can easily win games with Justin, win a lot of games with Justin. So it's a tough decision for the Bears. I don't think there's an easy. It's definitely going this way. If I had to bet, I'm going to say they're going to draft Caleb, but it still feels up in the air.
I agree, and I think you hit it right on the head when you said that. Look, when he sits down in front of Caleb and talks to him, and that's what these interviews and that's what this draft process really is all about. Because we don't know that. We're not in the room with these guys. We don't know what they're looking for when they're meeting these kids eye to eye. And every franchise is different, what they're looking for specifically. So yeah, and I think you also hit it when you said you just got to trust them, and that's the thing. That's what I say all the time about my general manager on my team. I say, look, if you trust them, you got to trust them. If you don't trust them, that's a different story. But you got to trust the guy if you believe in your general manager. And we'll see how that unfolds. So, all right, let me ask you then. If they trade Fields, what do you think they need to get in return to make it a good deal?
Well, so that's tricky too. Because, I mean, in my mind, you're not trading Justin because of his value. Because, look, Mel Kiper thinks that Atlanta might consider trading the 8th overall pick from. I think that Mel is wrong. But, I mean, Mel's way more on the inside than I am. So maybe Mel actually does know what he's talking about. I think that's crazy. If you could get the 8th pick for him, like let's just say hypothetically the Bears get that. So now they own the 1, the 8, and the 9.
Oh, yeah, they'd be ecstatic. Yeah.
I mean, that's insanity. Yeah. And in my mind, you would – I mean, you can go about this a million different ways. But if I could trade the 8 and the 9 to come up and get Marvin along with Caleb –
yeah.
I'm dancing now,
yeah.
and it's not about winning the offseason, it's about winning the Super Bowl. But that you would have won the offseason if you did that.
Yeah.
So
you can't pass that deal up. No.
Yeah. So if we're talking about home runs, getting enough value for Justin to me that you can pair with that 9 pick to move up and take Marvin, to me that would be the absolute dream scenario. But if we're just talking about Justin, I'm not. I'm. If I'm the Bears, I'm not really worried about the package that I'm getting for Justin. I'm worried about, do I love Caleb? Well, so if I do, then okay. Is it a 2nd and a 3rd? Is it just a 2nd? Is it a 3rd and a 5th? I don't. How much do people believe in Justin out there? I know that in some NFL circles he's very well thought of, and then I'm sure there's plenty of others where they don't think he can play. So. It's beauty in the eye of the beholder right here. And then, of course, who are you competing against? But some teams are, silly enough to just compete against themselves. If you look back in Bears' time, who do you want to deal with? You don't want to deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers and their goods in Chase Claypool. You do want to deal with the dysfunctional Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, right.
So who's dysfunctional? Who doesn't know what they're doing? Let's try to make a deal with them.
Yeah. Either way, it's going to be that's the big domino. Just like everybody's waiting for the coaching deals with Belichick and Harbaugh, we're all waiting for Chicago to make this deal if they're going to make a deal. So we'll see how that goes. All right. So let's. Matter of fact, I'm going to pop up on the screen. This is the. Well, there you are. Going to move you down so you're not. Well, it doesn't matter if your head's on the screen with me. This is the depth chart, the Ourlads depth chart of the Chicago Bears. So obviously you could check that out because we're going to go over this right now. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about the salary cap and free agency. So let's get right to it. And first of all, start with, well, actually, before we do that, I got to ask you about the offensive coordinator rumors in the news there. There's talk about Cliff Kingsbury. What's your, do you have any best guess on what you think is going to transpire there as far as the offensive coordinator gig?
To be honest, I don't. Like you've talked to 9 people, and they're still moving through, and very few of them have a tie to Matt Eberflus.
Okay.
So doesn't seem like this is going to be a hire that the head coach is making on his own, certainly. So, I mean, Shane Waldron seems like the most exciting name, you know, out in Seattle because Pete's not staying on and all. So that was the first candidate that was put out there. The Bears reached out to him immediately. They went down that road. They're very interesting in the McVay Shanahan tree here. Literally everybody they're talking to has some connection to that, with the exception of two, I believe. So it's a huge hire, and I thought what was interesting about it, just to jump back into the conversation we were having earlier, they're not asking how are you going to coach Caleb. They're asking how are you going to coach 4 different quarterbacks. So, now I don't know if it's just 4 random quarterbacks. They're just saying how would you coach this guy, and this is player X, and this is player Y, and this is what he does. Or if they're talking about 4 quarterbacks, May, Caleb, Justin, and backup Tyson Bagent. Like I don't know how exactly, but they're not they're and I think correctly so. One of the problems the Bears have had is that Matt Nagy tried to make Justin play in his system. Luke Getsy at times just seemed very slow to adapt to what Justin Fields does well. So can you coach the player in front of you, whoever that player is, to be their best? I mean, that's the job of the coach, right? And I think they're pretty focused on getting somebody who's at least fairly versatile in their ability to do that.
Okay, let's dive into players. And by the way, it doesn't really matter who the defensive coordinator is going to be, or does it?
Well, what's interesting about that one is that once Matt Eberflus got in there last year with Alan Williams, jettisoned in the middle of the year under mysterious circumstances, Flus did a good job. So I get that they're hiring a defensive coordinator, but the team was better when he was calling plays.
Yeah.
So, I would hope that the way they're looking at that hire is that Matt Eberflus is doing the same thing, because that's the best thing he's done as the Bears head coach.
Yeah, I say this all the time. I just find it so strange how come most of the time when an offensive coordinator gets the gig as the head coach, like 99% of the time, he's still the offensive coordinator. But when the defensive guy gets the head coaching job, 50% of the time, maybe less, I'm just the head coach. I'm going to hire a defensive coordinator, and I'm going to let him run my defense. Why is that? How come the defensive guy that was hired because he's a defensive specialist has to relinquish those duties and become a CEO? I just always find that kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree.
All right, let's go into the players deal, because free agency and Ngakoue and Patrick, I believe, are 2 of the bigger names, including Jalen Johnson, the biggest, and Darnell Mooney, of course, also a big name with Foreman. So those are some of the bigger names, but the big one is Jalen Johnson. They're not going to let Jalen Johnson walk, are they?
Well, it's interesting. I know is the answer. I do not think they are, but that was wide open midway through the season. And I just think Jalen played so well and took their feedback, and they realized the impact that he has on the locker room, that all the conversations. Jalen said he believes he's going to get a deal done, and the Bears are saying from Ryan Poles, Jalen is going to be here. Now they can franchise tag him and all that, so maybe
true.
If things go completely sideways, he ends up getting tagged. But I don't think so. I think a long-term deal is that. The guy's 24 years old.
Oh yeah,
he's one of the top cornerbacks out there. You're signing Jalen Johnson. I mean, it just. The Bears have plenty of money. They also have plenty of needs. So it is, if you could, you always want to get somebody cheaper, but I don't think they're going to do that with Jalen.
All right, let's stick in the secondary, because the team drafted a couple of guys last year, and taking a look at the cornerback situation right now. How did those rookies do, by the way, Stevenson and Smith? Because along with Kyler Gordon, who seemed to improve in year 2. If they bring back Johnson, they do seem to be pretty set then at corner, as long as those rookies did their job.
Tyreek Stevenson had a great year, especially for a rookie. He was a little bit up and down, but he made a lot of big-time plays, was able to get his hands on the ball, and is every bit of a solid number 2 cornerback right now. Kyler Gordon, who they drafted, that was Ryan Poles' first pick as general manager in the second round last year. He had a great year. So now you got three really solid corners, and Terrell Smith was a 5th-round pick, had a good year too. So I mean, he faltered in the last week starting with Jalen being out with a shoulder injury, and that is also the one thing about Jalen. He had a shoulder injury coming out of Utah, coming into the NFL, and then he ended the year hurt because he dinged the shoulder in the second to last game. So that's not going to change anything.
Sure.
But it does give me slight pause that I'm not sure how this looks completely down the line. Although Jalen's never obviously been a guy that's going to come up and pop people, so it shouldn't really matter a whole lot. But to answer the question in a long way here, all those guys had very good seasons. The only question in the secondary right now is safety Eddie Jackson.
Okay.
And whether or not he'll take a team friendly deal. His number is way high in the last year of his contract. I can't see the Bears paying that. So does Eddie, what type of offer does Eddie get elsewhere? And if it ain't that great, then I could see him coming back on a much more team friendly deal and keeping that secondary completely intact.
Okay, so he's somebody to keep an eye on for possible cap casualty if he doesn't renegotiate.
Yes,
okay.
100%.
All right, and that would definitely be a big need because they already probably need a third safety. Is that correct?
Feels a little luxurious. I mean, Elijah Hicks had a decent year as nothing, there's nothing super sexy there, but I don't remember, at least myself, watching him like thinking, this guy can't play.
Okay.
So of things that the Bears need, the secondary is low on the list.
Okay. Linebackers, Edwards, another really good season, it looked like. Edmonds. Now, Edmonds interesting because in Buffalo, high pick, doesn't really do well. Best year, contract year, comes to Chicago, gets the money. And again, I don't know. I mean, was he okay? Is he definitely, not to say that you could do anything about it, but is that linebacker unit okay? Because it looked like the two young kids, Sanborn and Sewell. Well, Sewell didn't play much, but it looked like Sanborn looks like a keeper and a long-term guy. So do they just need more from Edmonds or were they happy with what they got?
I think overall they're going to grade Tremaine well. He was certainly, it's steady in that locker room.
Okay.
And the Bears just have a very good room right now. And you're not signing a guy for $19 million a year to just be a locker room guy. So he's got to make plays, and Tremaine did. It was a little bit less in the beginning of the season. His numbers never really popped off the charts, but the Bears went from being awful against the run to being in the top two against the run. So the linebacking core had a lot to do with that, and Tremaine is right in the thick of that. So I don't think the Bears regret that signing at all.
Okay. Obviously, the Sweat deal, big part of that, no question about it. That was a master deal, it looks like at this point. But we talked about it before last season that they needed to find some edge guys. So they got one, but they need more, don't they? Especially when you're running a 4-3. It can't just be Montez Sweat.
Correct. And look, Poles last year swung and traded a second-round pick for Chase Claypool that couldn't have gone worse. And he talked about getting the go-ahead from management to keep firing as he was contemplating doing the Sweat deal. And so he did, and he's feeling awful good about that right now because, he was here for all of 5 seconds, and he signed an extension. And the guy played well.
Yeah.
So, but yes, that is, if you could pair one more dude with Montez, you really would have something. Because the Bears did, the interior of that defensive line started to come on in rookies Javon Dexter and Zach Pickens. And you also, they got a lot of production from an underrated signing in Andrew Billings, and Justin Jones had a good year. So not, nothing sexy there either, but just a solid rotational guy. So they, there still is the need for that dominant 3-tech, but it's not as significant of a need as it was last year.
Okay. We have less than 10 minutes, so let's go through the offense here and start at wide receiver. Of course, we've already been through the quarterbacks. So DJ Moore, that seemed to really work out. Tyler Scott was a rookie. Mooney, as I mentioned, is a free agent. What are they looking for? They're looking for like a number 2, or do they believe Scott's the number 2, and then they'll just get a slot guy to replace Mooney? How's that looking right now?
So I think they look at Scott as a 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah, he doesn't catch the ball consistently enough, and he doesn't have the size. There is the speed there, but I don't think they're looking at him as more than that.
Okay.
Darnell, we're now 2 seasons away from his 1,000-yard campaign. He was super frustrated with the offense this year. So do they give another swing with Mooney, who you're going to have to sign him with a new offensive coordinator who really thinks he can play? I mean, to me, Darnell signs a 1-year deal with a team like Kansas City. He has a huge year, and then he can get paid. So I'd be skeptical on him coming back. And look, DJ Moore is a great player, but he's never been a Pro Bowler. He had a phenomenal season last year. So, but I do think that's why a guy like Marvin is so unbelievably appealing. Because if you can have a stud next to DJ who is incredibly solid, 230-yard game against Washington this year, the most yards that he's had in a season, paired well with Justin. DJ's very vocal about wanting to keep Justin too. So, I mean, he's going to do, he's played with a zillion quarterbacks in Carolina. He'll play with one more here in Chicago if need be. But that pairing, they came together instantly. So, but the bottom line is that they need another Big Ten play receiver.
Yeah, because that'll make DJ an elite number 2 wide receiver. That's really
exactly.
what you want. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, and Kmet continues to improve, correct? And the other 2 guys are free agents. So, I mean, are they just going to re-sign those guys? I know Lewis is like 80, but are they just going to keep re-signing those guys, and Kmet maybe takes another gear?
So, Kmet's on a 4-year extension now. It'll be year 2. Cole Kmet is underrated nationally. That dude is phenomenal. He's a very good run blocker. He's the best teammate. I love that guy. We had him on our show all season long at CHGO Bears, so I'm biased, but you can't find a more impressive dude. And he can catch the ball. I mean, he had his best year catching the football. So, I mean, he's a huge credit to that locker room. Robert Tonyan didn't do anything this year. That was a disappointment. They loved Mercedes Lewis. Loved him. Big dog is what they call them. I guess maybe that is what's called everywhere. But, 18 years in the league, wants to go to a 19th. So, I don't know if it'll be here, but they were certainly happy that they brought him into the room. And I think he had a pretty large impact when you lost your defensive coordinator, with Justin getting hurt, a running backs coach got fired as well. I mean, you had a lot of things going on around that building, and a very slow start. 3-7. Or is it 3-8? Whatever, doesn't matter. You get the point.
Yes.
It was rough in there, and the Bears, won 5 of their last 7. Were a Cleveland blown late lead away from actually being right there on the final weekend to make the playoffs. So Mercedes gets some significant credit for how that locker room handled all the adversity this year.
Running back now, Foreman is a free agent. They drafted Johnson. I think I mentioned this on the show last year. I'm a big Herbert fan. Once again, I don't watch every single play, but I just really believe that he deserves a chance as a true number 1, not a rotation guy. But do you think they'll go into this year with a 2-man rotation with Johnson and Herbert and just add a third guy? Or are they going to go back to this 3-man rotation?
Well, look, Deontay Foreman, whenever he got a chance to play this year, played well.
He did.
But he was incredibly disappointed at the end of the year when he was healthy and active the last 2 games. So I don't think he's coming back. And I don't think they view Herbert as a true 1, and they do love Roshan. And I think they also really like the fullback Kari Blasingame.
Okay.
In a sort of niche 2024 role, I mean, he's never going to be somebody who carries the ball or even catches the ball, but what he can bring to that offense as far as blocking, they appreciate. So my guess is that they add some, maybe a late round running back to go with the first 2 as just insurance if Khalil goes down, because or Roshan, I guess, because I don't think they view either of those guys that can be able to hold on by themselves.
Okay.
So that's my guess.
And then finally, the offensive line. And it looks to me that is your tackle situation set? I mean, are they happy with Braxton as the left tackle? Wright, of course, was the rookie. Is that their future there?
The Braxton part's still a question.
Okay.
I think some view him as a better swing tackle versus your starting left tackle. This is a 5th-round pick out of Southern Utah who started his entire rookie season and then got hurt and missed a bunch of time this year. But when he got back on the field, he played fine. Left tackles are hard to get. Would you use your, let's just say they draft Caleb at 1, they don't trade back, and then you're sitting there at 9. Are you going to use the 9 on a left tackle and then, make Braxton a swing guy and figure out how to get weapons elsewhere, which, you go and you look at a lot of late round receivers that the teams are hitting on. The Bears just don't seem to be able to do it. Romeo Doubs is having the time of his life up there, and I loved him coming into the draft, but the Bears didn't pick him. So
it's gonna be a deep class starting in that 2nd round area. There's gonna be a lot of guys available.
So then you go that route. I mean, listen, that's over my pay grade at this point.
Sure.
It's good to know that.
Yes.
So maybe they'll look at it that way and they'll draft a left tackle. But I'm not sure because I think they also think that Braxton can hold it down. I think they're well aware they don't have an elite left tackle.
Okay, and then inside, is it Cody Whitehair? Is it time to move on?
That time is over. He was a good soldier, but they benched him late in the year, and Lucas Patrick's been too injured in his 2 years here to come back as a center. So you're looking for a new center. Tevin Jenkins has trouble staying healthy, but when he's on the field, he's so good that I think they continue to lean on Tevin. And Nate Davis, just a bad signing. I mean, he graded out poorly a lot this year, and he missed a bunch of time. That contract is. I mean, they gave him 3 years and $30 million. It just doesn't look very good at all. But
they stuck with him.
I think for one more year. I forget the exact cap hit on it, but I think they're stuck with him for one more.
Okay, so they definitely need to add 2 interior linemen without question.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Well, by the way, special teams, once again, the place kicking job. Santos is doing an excellent job, but they got to upgrade punter, don't they?
Yeah, I think they like Trenton Gill, but his numbers are at the bottom of the NFL.
Yeah.
Punters are just getting insane right now because every week I do grades and I look at Gill's numbers and he's averaging 45 yards a punt.
I know, right?
It's not exactly terrible.
Yeah.
But he's not at the top of the NFL. So they've already brought in one punter that they signed in the offseason for some level of competition. I don't think it's definite that they move on, but I'm sure they're looking at it.
All right, Mark, appreciate it. Again, we have the link in the description area for the YouTube channel, CHGO Sports, so you can check that out for all the Bears coverage. And, of course, we also have the other links to follow you on Twitter and so forth. So how often are you on that YouTube show?
We're a daily show at noon, Monday through Friday. I do Monday through Thursday, and then game days, and I float over to I do a second show on Thursday. So it's we're just grinding every day here, Greg. It's an absolute battle coming up with Bears content every single day. But the Bears are making this really easy for so they're in the thick of a lot of things here. So
yes,
it's an exciting offseason.
Absolutely. And we look forward to getting an opportunity to talk to you again between now and the draft. But once again, Mark, I appreciate it. And best of luck moving forward. This offseason should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Continued success. And let's flip it around and get you on the CHGO show when you have time.
I'd love it.